tonight's horror story, we will be talking about a recent news story, the Winterland horror. Let's begin. It began with a chime. Every hour, the clock in the council house tolled through the square. A deep, resonant note that rolled across the winter wonderland. The stalls, the Ferris wheel, the wooden cabins selling mulled wine and roasted chestnuts, all trembled slightly under its weight. At 6:15 p.m. on a Sunday evening in December, it sounded again, but this time the sound lingered too long, vibrating in the air like a tuning fork. The pigeons scattered. The fairy lights flickered once, twice, then dimmed to a sullen orange glow. Talia Markham, who ran the donut stall by the skating rink, looked up from the fryer. She thought she'd imagined the silence that followed. A deep, unnatural hush, like the city itself had drawn a breath and refused to exhale. Then she saw them, 4 figures standing motionless at the bottom of the council house steps. Each wore a white mask, featureless, except for 2 small eye holes. 2 of them carried long, dull blades, the kind of heavy machetes used in the old slaughterhouses down by the canal. They glinted faintly in the cold light. At first, people thought it was a performance. Winter Wonderland always had street acts, mummers, carolers, jugglers. But when one of the masked youths dragged the machete across the pavement, shrieking sparks into the air, the illusion broke. Screams erupted. Children were pulling away. Ice skates scattered. The sound came back, all of it. In a rush of panic, Talia's stomach turned over. And then the chimes stopped. The first police car arrived within 3 minutes. Too late for calm. 4 males, early teens or 20s, black masks, 2 armed, barked the voice on the radio from the officer's shoulder. "Move, move!" Talia crouched behind her stall, peering between bags of flour. The Ferris wheel lights strobed blue and red as the officers advanced, guns low. But the figures didn't run. They stood perfectly still. The machetes held downward, tips resting on the ground like swords at a grave. Then one tilted its head down towards the lions. The 2 massive stone beasts flanking the council house steps. For a second, Talia thought she saw one of the lions move. Its jaw shifted. tightening around the teeth, like a grimace. She blinked hard. The cold air burned her eyes. The officers shouted warnings. People filmed from a distance. Shaky hands. Bright screens. The masked youths stepped back in unison into the deep shadow beneath the portico where the lights didn't reach. One of them lifted the blade and vanished. Not ran, not ducked. Vanished, like fog retreating into itself. The others followed, dissolving into the black space between the pillars. When the police reached the steps, they were gone. The officers climbed, shouted, swept their torches. Only footprints remained, smeared, wet impressions that bled into nothing halfway up the stairs. And the chimes sounded again. 6:15. The crowd scattered, but not everyone left. Talia stayed. She didn't know why. The police tape went up. They ushered vendors away, muttering about public safety and cordons. The Winter Wonderland music tried to restart. A tinny loop of Silent Night, playing from speakers above the rink. But it distorted, pitching low until it sounded like a funeral dirge. Her friend Jade came rumming from the carousel. They're saying it's some kind of gang thing, she gasped. Machete's kids, you saw them, right? Talia nodded. But what she'd seen wasn't something human. As the crowd thinned, she looked again toward the council house. The lions sat where they always had, still, proud, ancient. Yet something about their faces seemed changed. The one on the left had a crack that hadn't been there before, running from its eyes down to its jaw like a tear. Come on, Jade urged. Let's get the hell out of here. But Talia shook her head. I need to see. The front doors were unlocked. That should have been impossible. The council house closed at 6 on Sundays. But when Talia pressed the heavy brass handle, it yielded with a groan. The marble foyer inside smelled of old dust and polish, and the echoes of her steps bounced up into the dome. She called out once, softly. No answer. Portraits of former mayors watched her from the walls. The eyes seemed to follow her. In the far corner, something dripped. Slow, hammering. It was only a melted patch of ice on the floor, dripping from her coat. She exhaled shakily. Then she heard the scrape, a dragging sound, metallic from the grand staircase that led to the council chamber. She turned. One of the masked youths stood halfway down the steps, staring at her through the holes of a porcelain mask. Its clothes hung, wet and dark. The machete's edge gleamed faintly red. Talia backed away, breath stuttering. "Please," she whispered. "I'm not." The figure tilted its head, the same jerky motion she'd seen before, and took a step forward. Its feet left wet marks on the marble, but the water wasn't clear. It was black, thick, almost oily. And then it spoke, or rather something inside it spoke. The voice came from behind the mask, layered, overlapping, dozens of whispers speaking the same words at once. The hour repeats, the chime collects, the debt is unpaid. Talia stumbled, turned and fled through the doors. Behind her, the chime struck again. 6:15. The news called it a public order incident. The city called it a tragic misunderstanding. But Talia